The Mirage 4000 flies for France in War Thunder. Let's check it out. By the mid-1970s, business leaders at Dassault Aviation recognized that they might do well to have a backup plan to the then-current Mirage 2000 after a lot of criticism that they were essentially betting the company on it. And they also recognized that a larger fighter might be able to take on additional missions. They privately funded the development of the Mirage 4000, which they nicknamed the Super Mirage, in parallel to the Mirage 2000, and the two jets made good use of similar aerodynamic research. The Mirage 4000 was a larger twin-jet design based on Dassault's proven delta-wing platform, but this time it had full-sized canards. The first and only prototype had its first flight in early 1979 and proceeded through a notably trouble-free development period. As the Mirage 4000 continued testing, it demonstrated excellent performance. It was fast, agile, and had the potential to carry significant military payloads. A serious effort was made to convince the French Air Force to adopt the new fighter alongside its single-engine little brother, but in the end, the military decided to focus on the Mirage 2000 instead. Dassault then tried to market the plane internationally as a potential substitute and competitor to the F-15 Eagle that wouldn't be subjected to US State Department re-export restrictions, but most potential customers either couldn't afford it or had good relations with the United States and weren't really concerned about export controls. There was some interest from a few countries in the Middle East, but in the end there were no orders for the plane, and the prototype was donated to a museum in late 1992. What we have in War Thunder is the Mirage 4000. This is a jet fighter in rank 8 of the French air tree with a battle rating of 12.3. This jet's combat system includes an EEGS, a full ballistics computer, night vision, and a fully featured radar warning receiver that tracks up into the J-band. It can also take the Atlas II targeting pod. Its radar is the RDM-3. This is an I-band radar set with head-on and head-on velocity pulse Doppler modes, track while scan, good range, and multiple ACM boresight frames, but notably, no all-aspect pulse Doppler mode, which I'll discuss later. For loadouts, the jet gets 11 pylons worth of rockets, bombs, missiles, drop tanks, and countermeasures dispensers. Notably, a few of the options to mount IR missiles come on the sides of small drop tanks. Speaking of air-to-air missiles, you start off with the R550 Magic II. This is an all-aspect infrared missile that was buffed recently and performs incredibly well, even up at the top tier. You can also take two versions of the Super 530, the D and the F models. The D is an upgrade over the F, but both are fairly capable medium-range semi-active radar missiles. These are generally best used between 4 and 10 kilometers. For air-to-ground missiles, you can take the legendary AS-30L, which is a laser-guided weapon with good range combined with a strong warhead. These can pop anything you can hit with them. Lastly, this jet can take the BGL-1000 laser-guided bomb. No inertial tracking, but it's got a heavy warhead with a good blast radius. The flight characteristics of this jet give it fairly good overall top-tier performance. Its acceleration is rather strong through the entire airspeed curve, it climbs well, and it has a very high maximum speed of over 1,500 kilometers an hour. The engines can be a bit thirsty, but the plane carries tons of fuel and you can bring drop tanks, so in the end, it doesn't really end up being any kind of an issue or problem with this jet. Something notable, though, is related to its overall maneuverability. I don't know if this is a fluke, but I found that going into high AOA turns in this jet doesn't seem to generate as much excessive G-forces as I'm used to, and as a result, I didn't have anywhere near as much pilot blackout, even in dogfights, compared to other rank 8 jets up at the top tier. With that interesting tidbit in mind, the overall agility of the Mirage 4000 is actually pretty good for such a huge jet. Being a very heavy canard delta, it has a great sustained turn rate, but it dumps energy really quick, and if you find yourself in a twisting one-on-one dogfight, You may find yourself out of energy after only 2 or 3 maneuvers if you're overly aggressive. One last consideration is that this is a heavy jet with a very aerodynamic shape, and it tends to gain a significant amount of speed in a dive. If you're going in for a dive on ground targets from high altitude, like in close air support, it's probably a good idea to watch your throttle and consider hitting the air brakes. When you take the Mirage 4000 out in air battles, there are a few things to consider up front. The radar on this jet doesn't have an all-aspect pulse Doppler mode. Now, at first, that might not seem like an issue, but remember that the head-on mode has a bit of a dead zone out up to a minimum range, so a lot of the time you might have to switch radar modes into regular search if you want to track up-close targets a bit more reliably. And this also makes your head-on mode radar locks a lot easier to notch off at medium range, which can significantly reduce the effectiveness of your semi-active radar missiles. That kinda sucks, as the Super 530D you get is a genuinely good weapon in a lot of situations, but I've found that the effectiveness of it suffers from the lack of an all-aspect pulse Doppler mode. Now, this isn't a new problem though, and a few of the other high-tier French jets have the same shortcoming. Still, the Mirage 4000 is a generally good dogfighter, and the Magic 2 can get you some great kills if you get up close with it. Just remember that you're physically a large jet, and it's an easy gun target for stuff like Gripens or F-16s. The reasonably good load of up to 8 missiles makes this jet pretty effective in the current mess of huge furballs and stuff in top-tier air battles. This jet can also take some pretty effective air-to-ground loadouts, in addition to or instead of its air-to-air missiles, which gives you some credible multi-role potential, and it makes the Mirage 4000 reasonably well suited for points grinding events. In terms of close air support, the Mirage 4000 can take some heavy laser-guided bombs and or the excellent AS-30L semi-active laser-guided anti-tank missiles. The ballistics computer makes the dumb bombs and rocket pods completely viable as well, but really, the laser-guided weapons are the standout option for taking out tanks and stuff, and this jet does just as well as the ground attack versions of the Mirage 2000. Overall, this plane is very well suited for ground battle lineups. Visually, the Mirage 4000 is a pretty interesting looking aircraft. You can get 3 paint jobs for it, but the default white prototype one is my personal favorite. You don't really see too many twin-engine Deltas like this, and they did a great job on the 3D model and the visuals, considering that this was just a one-off prototype. Landing is reasonably simple, kind of similar to other Delta Wing fighters. You can drop landing gear a bit over 400 kilometers an hour. No landing flaps, but it has a drag chute combined with good brakes. Overall, the landing performance on this plane is great. The cockpit is a bit of a mixed bag. The visibility is good, and it has a useful heads-up display, but the radar scope is down low center, which is like the worst possible spot in my opinion. And the other instruments are in kind of odd places. This was a one-off prototype, and it shows. Fairly average cockpit for a high-tier jet. To close out with the Mirage 4000. This jet is fast. It carries a ton of ordnance. It's reasonably good in a dogfight, and it's great at close air support. However, it's a physically large target in air combat, and its radar lacks an all-aspect pulse Doppler mode. The final verdict on the Mirage 4000 is that this jet fills a bit of a role in the French tech tree for a do-it-all type of multi-role jet with much more ordnance than the Mirage 2000s can take. Until we eventually get the Rafale someday, this is France's most capable jet fighter. As always, thanks for watching.